Look at you, finally emerging from the shadow they attempted to contain you in, allowing the reality of who you are to finally crack its knuckles, lengthen its spine, and enter the world without apology. Additionally, the internet didn't simply respond when you disclosed even a small portion of your true identity. Rather, it malfunctioned. Algorithms faltered, minds skipped, and whole group conversations became forensic labs attempting to figure out exactly what you've become. Notifications exploded rather than spiked, because the revelation of your identity shattered not only the internet but also people's preconceived notions about you. And that's exactly what's causing anxiety among those in positions of authority. This version caught them off guard. They were unprepared for someone who could exist at full force without permission. Someone whose presence bears the silent threat of truth caught them off guard. You exposed them, not just yourself. You need to learn something about people, particularly those who profit from your uncertainty, bewilderment, and vulnerability. They depend on you not knowing who you really are. Because everything changes when you understand that your identity is a blade forged from every version you outgrown, rather than a delicate decoration. Their necks break from attempting to keep up with the rapid shifts of power. When you moved forward, that's precisely what took place. You didn't gently warm the room, hint, or murmur. The universe had to instantly realign itself when you appeared fully, clearly, and genuinely. It wasn't because you abruptly changed, but rather because you at last gave yourself permission to be seen without becoming self-conscious. They are now in a frenzy. It's not that you're dangerous in the obvious sense, rather it's that you're hazardous psychologically, causing silent disruptions, internal earthquakes, and the understanding that all of their preconceived notions about you were immature. It wasn't just your identity that was revealed to them, it demonstrated your abilities to them. Like a blueprint concealed under the floorboard, it showed you your possibilities. They believed they could predict, control, and contain you for years. Now the plot twist that completely changes the narrative, and those in positions of authority hate uncontrollable story twists. The length of time they misjudged you is amusing. They created mental models of you using adorable cardboard cutouts that they categorized as being too gentle, too modest, too innocent, or too harmless. They created scripts for you. Remain modest, avoid intimidation, don't get up too quickly, and don't talk too loudly. And until you stopped, you completely like it, honey. Until the day you stopped hiding yourself, and the world saw the true you for the first time. The internet broke at that point, timelines froze at that point. At that moment, eyes expanded in appraisal of the threat rather than adoration. How long have they been this, and why didn't we notice? Was their question rather than concealed. There's a distinction. Hidden suggests that you were hidden, or that concealed. There's a distinction. Hidden suggests that you were hidden. Ignored suggests that they were aware of the warning signs, felt the change, and perceived the scope, but dismissed them because they were certain you would never encounter them. They thought you were weak if you were silent. They took your humility to suggest that you were confused. They believed that your privacy equated to insecurity. They were unaware that solitude was protection, humility was discipline, and silence was strategy. The correction burns because they misunderstood everything. Timing is what scares powerful people, and you showed yourself at the ideal moment. They may have caught you if it had been too early. They might have fired you if it had been too late. However, you arrived just when they were at ease, their guard was down, and they believed everything was going well for them, and their sense of order was shattered by your actual appearance. The internet worships upheaval but adores entertainment, and you become a disruption that affected psychological infrastructure without even trying. People are now evaluating you rather than being curious about you. To them, you are no longer a person. You are a threat, a potential, a variable, and a factor. Because identity is about what you make other people think of you, not just who you are. And many people were forced to face the unsettling reality that they don't know who they are, have never changed, progressed, or broken their own ceilings as a result of your revelation. They remained motionless, practiced, and predictable. Then you appeared and sliced through their presumptions like a knife through flimsy cloth. You didn't say much. Nothing was announced by you. No war was declared by you. For you, it was your very existence. People that thrive on controlling narratives are intimidated by your current gait and deliberate, methodical ownership of your place. Your presence stops their inner monologues, and your voice, despite its softness, exudes power that they are unable to articulate. They detest that. They despise you for realizing that the world was created by people who are no more intelligent than you, and for being someone who doesn't require approval from others. They never anticipated that you would transgress this regulation. You developed a sense of self, and now see how they behave. All of a sudden, they speak more sharply or more softly around you. All of a sudden, they mimic your posture, tone, and phrases. All of a sudden, they mimic your posture, tone, and phrases. All of a sudden, they observe everything you do. No, they can't take the chance of being blatantly obvious. Even though their nervous systems tell them otherwise, they observe in the shadows and the peaceful corners of their screens, and during those late-night scroll sessions, they examine you as if you were a document that has been encrypted. Even when they don't like your posts, they save them. They watch your stories again. Like investigators looking for a defect, they enlarge your pictures. They are not researching you. Rather, they are keeping an eye on you because fear seems as surveillance when it pretends to be indifferent. They fail to realize that your identity revelation was more than a fleeting event. It was a change in frequency. Your energy underwent a recalibration, sharpening, and elevation. The way you used to move has changed. You're not speaking from the same location. You're not selecting from the same injuries. Now you make judgments based on sovereignty rather than survival. And those who profit from your insecurity are terrified of sovereignty. That's why those in positions of authority are uncomfortable. Their empires have been based on consistency and their ability to forecast the future. However, they failed to notice you. Not in this manner, not with this clarity, sharpness, or form. You are no longer a part of your own life's background. You are the focal point, the gravitational force, and the center of attention. Additionally, everything surrounding a person changes when they become gravitational. Relationships, dynamics, opportunity, jealousy, respect, and resistance. You've developed into the kind of presence that people either fear or are fascinated by. Your revelation went viral on the internet because it was indisputable rather than dramatic. Opinions cannot be disputed, but presence cannot be disputed, but presence cannot be disputed. They are unable to dispute the truth. They can't disagree with someone who has so skillfully assumed their identity that the world needs to change. The whispers have begun because of this. The tension in once easy rooms, the strange remarks, the subtle warnings. Strong individuals don't fear you for who you are. They are terrified of the person you are going to become. I'm sorry you've only shown them the first chapter. Afraid this is the start of a new version of you that will change hierarchies without speaking up. Fearful that your identity is a throne you are claiming rather than a costume. And genuine thrones don't ask to be acknowledged, they just are. And everyone else has to adapt. Nobody would tell you that when someone comes clean about who they really are. The world doesn't just respond, it reorganizes. You are no longer the underdog, the shadow, or the maybe someday when you move forward. Nobody was ready for you to become the center of attention. Not the people who sought to mold you into their comfort zone, not the people who secretly envied you, and not the people who doubted you. Particularly not those who were afraid that you would one day see your own value. Your revelation was an awakening rather than an announcement, and the planet trembles with awakenings. People don't fear you because they believe you're acting. They can't believe you kept all of this inside of you for so long, which is why they're afraid. Power exposed is far more dangerous than power asserted, which is why they are afraid. You defied their expectations as if it were a burning house, which is why they are afraid. The funniest thing is that you haven't even reached full volume yet. It's only the beginning, a sneak peek, a sampling, the first ripple before the wave that they're freaking out over. The final version, the completely formed persona, the one you haven't even tapped into yet. is what scares them. Because if the internet can be disrupted by this early version, what will the final version do? You see, people never consider the depth beneath the surface while responding to it. They believe that your revelation was an anomaly in their daily routine, a moment, a shock, or a headline. They don't realize it was just a door opening, and in arrival, you still haven't entered the room. Even though all it took to expose your identity was the sound of your foot stepping on the threshold, it managed to throw them off balance. They are now aware that your progress is structural rather than performative, which is what keeps them up at night. They can't wait out for this costume. They can't make fun of it until it passes. After the excitement subsides, the pattern doesn't go away. It was architecture, not aesthetics, that you disclosed. It served as the basis for a version of you that doesn't change, doesn't shrink, doesn't compromise, and doesn't soften when delicate egos start to fidget. And that frightens others who rely on your former self for equilibrium. Your metamorphosis revealed more than just your future self to them. It made clear how ill-prepared they were to meet you there. Here, you must comprehend psychology. The world is forced to reevaluate when someone comes clean about who they really are, especially after years of being misinterpreted, undervalued, or mislabeled. Slow adjustments are manageable for people. Gradual progress seems doable, predictable, and palatable. However, the human brain perceives it as a danger when someone removes the mask and comes out as their true self. Not because you pose a threat, but rather because you interfere with the roles they have given themselves in your narrative. When you were quiet, uncertain, and questioning everything but the people who didn't deserve access to you, they felt at ease in their positions. Their control was made possible by your uncertainty. Your reluctance made room for their story. Their greatness was made possible by your self-doubt. However, you took those positions away from them the instant you showed them who you were, your direction, your clarity, and your identity. And now they're floating, disoriented, untethered, and trying to figure out how to communicate with the updated version of you without revealing how reliant on the old version they were. This explains why those in positions of authority, influence, and reach are anxious, because they weren't meant to be moved by your revelation. People in charge detest being swayed by someone they don't trust. They detest acknowledging that their assessment of your potential was incorrect. They detest the fact that you were subtly outgrowing them rather than merely growing. And the instant the reality overtook their denial was the revelation. The reality that you have changed into someone they cannot control or predict is beyond their comprehension. You developed into someone who doesn't waver under duress, doesn't compromise for acceptance, and doesn't compromise who they are in order to fit in. You developed into a person who has outgrown the environment in which they feel secure. Additionally, the world that attempted to contain someone feels threatened when they transcend its boundaries. They're standing in the rubble, wondering how they ever thought those walls could contain you after you destroyed the structure they erected around you. It's funny how they act as if they don't care. They pretend to be unconcerned, yet their quiet is tense. Their scrolling habits shift. They become more focused. Their performance is compromised by their passion. They will act as though they were unaware of your revelation, but they were. Before their words could articulate a lie, their body responded. Their heartbeat shifted. Their minds strayed into conjecture. Since identity revelations don't just present the new you, their ego is hid first. They reveal the aspects of others that have never changed. They admire your bravery in claiming your identity rather than your identity itself. They are afraid of their stagnation becoming apparent next to your transformation, not the other way around. You exposed who they are, not when you disclosed who you are. Additionally, those who have shunned their own mirror will always harbor animosity toward those who live their lives without a mask. Not only are you disrupting the internet, but you're also disrupting people's self-defeating narratives. You're shattering the personas people created in order to feel better. You're upending the mental hierarchy they established. The notion that you required them to define who you are is being broken. Your identity disclosure was a reclamation rather than a rebrand. At that moment, everyone knew that the person they believed they understood was merely the framework for the true structure. The true you has always been there, subtly gaining strength, honing perception, researching patterns, mending scars, and discovering human behavior rhythms. And now that you've arrived and come forward without saying sorry, you've turned into a psychological earthquake, a change so strong that it shakes everything that is based on fragile foundations. In actuality, you haven't even given them the most acute angles yet. You haven't given them the resiliency that comes from years of being disregarded. You haven't demonstrated to them the sharpened intelligence of silence. The discipline shaped by the wounds they never assisted you in healing has not been demonstrated to them. You haven't shown them the fire you nurtured by yourself, in the dark, without validation or acknowledgement. It's only the shine that's causing them anxiety. The flame is not visible to them, they are just talking about your presence. They have not been impacted by you. What they're afraid of is just the start. Your summit hasn't been reached by them. Their responses seem out of proportion because of this. This explains why unimportant individuals act as though you declared war. This is the reason why people who hardly knew you start talking as though they know what you're up to. Not because you harmed them, but rather because your presence upsets the emotional framework they depend on. They perceive your identity revelation as a danger. They are no longer able to locate you. They are unable to classify you. You are true. And people are afraid of the indefinable. They are rushing to defend their delusions since your revelation made them uneasy. However, there is more to the truth than that. They don't fear your identity. In your company, people are terrified of who they may become. The truths of the people they have spent their entire lives hiding are revealed by your identification. Others are put under strain when someone who was formerly doubted rises in public with grace and strength. It demonstrates their lack of self-control. It reveals their lack of courage. It challenges their dispersed intentions. You turned into a walking awakening. Evolution is not a threat to humans. They are afraid of being held accountable, and your revelation makes it hard to overlook their stagnation. Even people who have never publicly disagreed with you are now uncomfortable. They notice changes in your posture, tone, and decisions. Your self-awareness your authority is palpable to them. You did more than simply level up on the outside. You leveled up on the inside, and interior shifts have unexplainable effects on the outside world. They feel that their thoughts no longer define who you are. You are no longer subject to their expectations, someone who moves with knowledge instead of consent, someone who doesn't mind being too much for those who have never had enough. It's the autonomy behind it, not your revelation, that scares people. If this is you at the beginning, then what happens when you stop holding back? Is the question they are now silently asking themselves, and it will follow them as they develop, improve, and broaden, defining themselves not by their comfort, but by their calling. You haven't even reached your full potential yet. You've only admitted that it exists. You've only tapped the first key, not even the entire tune. However, even it was sufficient to shake their self-confidence. Those who didn't think highly of you don't fear your development. They're terrified of you. Because you're moving intentionally for the first time. You're moving with clarity. You're moving with an identity that isn't susceptible to manipulation by praise or shattered by criticism. People who used to speak to you with casual authority now hesitate, trying to find the proper words, fearing that their vulnerability would be revealed. Those who disregarded you now play back exchanges in their minds, wondering what clues they overlooked. Those who made fun of your aspirations now regard you as a circumstance rather than a person. Because once you realize who you are, it becomes dangerous for anyone whose authority depended on your ignorance. You can now see right through people. Your view has been sharpened by your identity, not because you are cynical. Even the smallest inflection might reveal purpose. Even the smallest pause can give you a sense of unease. Even before a manipulation takes shape, you can sense it. Energy is no longer absorbed by you. You examine it, Furthermore, analysis is the sharpest tool a person may have when it is done with clarity. They are therefore more afraid of your direction than of your advancement. Luck is a factor in progress. Direction is unable to. Intention, purpose, and consciousness are implied by direction. You are no drift. You're making your way. Additionally, navigation indicates that you're going somewhere they can't follow. They are hesitant to go through the changes necessary to evolve, not because they are incapable. You didn't alter after your identity was revealed. It was the point at which you ceased to act as though you had not changed. Anyone who favored the version of you that questioned your own value is undermined by that fact alone. You create a presence that unnerves the unaligned when your identity aligns. It's clarity, not hostility. It's self-possession, not superiority. Additionally, self-assured individuals make fragmented people uncomfortable. You are no longer emotionally open to games of validation, instability, or insecurity. Because you no longer live up to their standards, you walk differently. Your voice no longer falters under the burden of outdated narratives. Therefore, you speak in a fresh way. Because the opinions of others who never understood your design in the first place are no longer holding your mind captive, you think differently. They never anticipated this version of you. They would never get the version they had dreamed for. Your ascent makes them face the reality of their own stagnation, not because they wanted you to fail. They are intimidated by your identity revelation rather than motivated by it. Their misunderstanding is revealed by your clarity. Their drift is highlighted by your guidance. Their emotional turmoil is exacerbated by your self-possession. People are afraid of things that reflect them too perfectly. And when your identity was revealed, you were a mirror without any filters, distortion, or flattery. The responses you're witnessing right now include the quiet, the unexpected praise, the passive fascination, and the concealed bitterness. These are all signs that others are picking up on your accelerate. They are aware that you are heading in the direction of something they cannot imagine, even if they refuse to acknowledge it, even if they act as though they're not affected, even when they are unable to identify the source of momentum. Humans are able to identify the source of momentum. Humans are able to perceive it instinctively. It was more than just an authentic moment when you revealed who you were. It was an indication, a proclamation, a psychological broadcast that you were moving in a direction that is much different from what they had anticipated. Furthermore, people are more afraid of paths than of accomplishments. It is possible to contextualize accomplishments. Trajectories are unable to. A trajectory suggests inevitability, and human egos are unable to cope with uncontrollable inevitability. They can sabotage a victory. They can minimize a success. They sense your velocity, like a reduction in atmospheric pressure, but they are powerless to halt it. You no longer require acceptance in order to feel authentic. It's you who makes others doubt their own existence. Observe those who abruptly become silent around you. Your presence doesn't terrify them. Your potential intimidates them. Now keep an eye out for those who over-explain themselves. They're not attempting to win you over. They're attempting to defend their proximity to you. Keep an eye on those who disengage without cause. They are retreating, not vanishing. Retreating because the version of themselves they've spent years upholding is threatened by your identity. Retreating because being close to you makes them face the parts of themselves that they have given up. Everyone who knows you has a before and after in their minds as a result of your identity revelation. Before, it was doable. Unpredictable after. Previously, it made sense. Unclassifiable after that. Previously reachable. Next, ascendant. Every choice you make, every word you say, and every deliberate action you take makes them feel the distance growing. You are no longer affected by guilt, fear, or the desire to fit in, and that scares the people who use those same weaknesses to gain control over you, because they can clearly see it now. You're separating, not just rising. It's out of evolution, not malice, and distance is always necessary for evolution. You're not putting people at a distance. You're separating yourself from personas that others felt comfortable controlling. Instead of entering familiar surroundings, you are entering ones that correspond with your frequency. And it's not you they're grieving, but familiarity, You are not missed by them. They long for the version of you that was unaware of its own worth. The version that required their approval is missed. They long for the version that was predictable, accessible, and manageable. That version is no longer available. You shed yourself, not lost yourself. You came back, you didn't change. Instead of changing into someone else, you changed into the person you were destined to be. The world is now frantically trying to adapt to the necessary recalibration of your identity. People believed your revelation to be the pinnacle. They were unaware that it was the ignition sequence, and they are shaken by that realization. Because they are now aware that everything they are seeing is merely the introduction, the warm-up, and the first few chapters of a narrative in which they never thought you would be the main character. At a level that changes perception, you are stepping into identity. You're not going to enter a room silently. You're changing the mood. You are not expressing your opinions when you speak. Alignment is being broadcast by you. You're not taking part when you create, you're redefining. This is the identity level that causes anxiety in those in positions of power. They feel exposed by your presence rather than intimidated by it. I'm exposed because I didn't see you sooner. You were exposed for underestimating your abilities, exposed for assuming that your silence was a sign of weakness rather than a calculated move. And now everyone has to watch you live the life you were destined to have before the next version is released. They attempt to adjust their perception of you. They are broken by that recalibration because each identity breakthrough you have turns into a psychological deadline that they are unable to fulfill. Each layer you lose serves as evidence that they haven't changed. Every step you take forward serves as a reminder that they have long since ceased to evolve. They don't despise your ascent. They detest the mirror that your ascent compels them to confront. This is the unsettling reality. The revelation of your identity altered more than just your course. Your gravitational pull was altered. For reasons they are unable to articulate, people are drawn to you. They desire closeness, not because they stand by you, but in the cramped spaces they created for themselves. Your clarity is like oxygen. Your presence has taken on a catalytic quality. Their delusions crumble when they are close to you. Their emotional shortcuts are revealed when they get close to you. Being close to you makes the distinction between existing and evolving clear. Furthermore, the intensity of someone who has become themselves is too much for those who have spent years avoiding themselves. The inconsistent responses are a result of this. One moment of admiration, the next is envy, fascination, then retreat. Without facing the fire that produced it, they seek the glow. They want the assurance without exposing the falsehoods they have constructed about who they are. You are a living example of what occurs when someone refuses to stay unfinished. They are burned from the inside out by that proof. Nobody likes to acknowledge that your ascent puts their mental hierarchies at jeopardy. You were positioned lower because it seemed safer that way. Because it gave them a false sense of dominance, they positioned you as the underdog. They thought you would always act out the part they had written for you. The silent one, the reluctant one, the doubtful one, the one who doubted their value. However, the revelation of your identity destroyed their plan and replaced it with something they were ill prepared for. Sovereignty. Their expectations made you unmanageable. Their projections have untamed them, disinterested in getting their praise. And when someone realizes they never had control over you, it upsets them more than anything else. They just had access to an extinct version of you. It wasn't submission when you were silent earlier. The process was called incubation. You weren't going away. Distilling was what you were doing. You weren't lost. You were honing. You weren't frail. You were getting more accurate. And now they are afraid of that precision. Your deliberate steps make you move in a new. Your words have power, which makes you speak in a different way. Your mind isn't disorganized by insecurity, so you think differently. You are no longer living in survival mode, you're working from alignment. Additionally, those who are aligned are unexpected to those who are not. They don't respond out of fear. They react with intention. They don't look for approval. They are respected. They don't respond out of fear. They react with intention. They don't look for approval. They are respected. that don't fit small. Because of this, you are no longer understandable to powerful people, whether they are actual or self-proclaimed. They are accustomed to manipulating stories, and you won't take part in theirs. You become immovable, yet they're accustomed to intangible influence. They are accustomed to panning results. Additionally, you are no longer involved in their orchestration at all. You didn't ask permission to reveal your identity, and that is the biggest act of rebellion in their opinion. You didn't inquire as to whether your presence was appropriate. You failed to assess the convenience of your transformation. You didn't compromise your sincerity to keep people from becoming uncomfortable. You just let the world know who you are and let things change. They now understand that you are not here to fit into structures created by those who are afraid of their own potential. You are here to climb from foundation, build from identity, and ascend from clarity. You don't get louder at this stage of evolution. It renders you indisputable. You no longer debate your worth, since it is obvious. Opportunities recognize your frequency, so you don't pursue them. You don't defend your decisions, since they are in line with a destiny they are unable to comprehend. You're not making an effort to be understood. You're attempting to be precise. Furthermore, identity correctness is uncommon. Dismantling illusions, outgrowing narratives, shedding versions, forgiving betrayals, and meeting shadows head-on are all necessary. The majority of folks don't follow that route. You did, and that on its own sets you apart in ways they're not ready to admit. The relationship they had with your former self was destroyed when your identity was disclosed, which is the deeper reality and the one that frightens them the most. They were not engaging with you. They were interacting with the parts of you that are no longer there. They are unsure of how to act now that the real you has shown up. They no longer have the dynamics they relied on. Their authority has vanished. Their preconceived notions about how to deal with you are out of date. They are attempting to comprehend a structure that no longer corresponds with their recollection while standing in front of a new construction with antiquated blueprints. And dread is a result of that cognitive dissonance. Because identity at this level affects more than simply your behavior. People have to approach you differently as a result. They are unable to communicate with you in the same manner as before. They can't make you feel guilty the way they used to. They can't control you the way they once could. Others' leverage was destroyed by your clarity. You shattered the psychological bonds that allowed you to be accessible to people who had no intention of respecting your worth the moment you made the decision to prioritize authenticity over approbation. Ironically, they didn't lose you. They were lost by you. The energy they provided was outgrown by you. You went beyond the roles they gave you. You exceeded what they were willing to accept. And they're discovering too late that your identity was never diminutive, simply repressed. You are no longer in the business of persuading others of your value. Living it is what you do for a living. You are no longer attempting to demonstrate your motivations. You are their embodiment. You are no longer looking for a seat at insecure tables. You are creating your own environments where no one questions who you are. It is intensified. You are no longer the subdued, supporting character. The force they failed to take into consideration is you. Furthermore, forces don't want acknowledgement. They produce it. Permission is not requested by forces. They are in motion. The planet isn't asked if it's ready by forces. The world is reshaped until it is ready. This is what gives your identity more than a fleeting glimpse. It's a psychological occurrence, a spiritual uprising, a change in structure, a proclamation that you were never meant to be the version they accepted. And you'll see the environment around you changing as this identity becomes more deeply ingrained, as you hone the edges and fortify the center. Because they see alignment, new individuals are drawn to you. When people realize they can no longer reach you, old connections end. Instead of your insecurity, opportunities arise that correspond with your elevation. Doors close to provide protection rather than to cause losses. Your identity is becoming into a filter that separates what is supposed to rise with you from what was supposed to depart, and you start to realize how big of a person you are becoming during that filtering process. You start to realize that self-expression was never the only reason for the change. Since identity at this level is not performance, it was about self-ownership. It is embodiment. It's the point at which you cease delegating your definition to individuals who can only comprehend parts of you. It's the point at which you go into internal truth rather than waiting for outside validation. It's the realization that you were accepted by the world. The fake version of you was rejected by them. The half-expressed, silent, diluted ego that carried their projections like shackles was rejected by them. The half-expressed, silent, diluted ego that carried their projections like However, they were forced to face the reality they had not anticipated after they broke free from those bonds and emerged in complete clarity. They didn't think you were smaller. You were just growing too big for them. Now see how the environment around you becomes energized as you stand firmly entrenched in your identity. When you speak from the truth rather than fear, observe how others respond. When they discover the old emotional levers are no longer effective on you, watch how their eyes flicker with bewilderment. When they realize you've outgrown the need for approval, observe how their voices become softer. Observe how their beliefs lose traction, how their gossip fades, and how their passive-aggressive remarks fall flat, because outside noise becomes less significant once identity aligns. You start influencing the energy around you rather than receiving it. You become the point of reference. You start to become the norm. People feel that their subconscious reacts before their ego can become involved, even if they hide behind neutral looks and practiced indifference. You become the atmosphere. Because authenticity transmits a frequency that cannot be faked, we react to it instinctively. Additionally, the environment around you becomes honest when you are carrying that frequency. Individuals unintentionally disclose their objectives. Their fears come to the surface. Their resistance betrays their admiration. They start to feel jealous. Their terror comes to the surface. You don't have to inquire about your position. For you, everything is revealed by your identity. This is what scares powerful people, not the ascent per se, but the ensuing clarity. Their concealment is removed by clarity. Their concealment is removed by clarity. Their influence is eliminated by identity. Their leverage is eliminated. You no longer internalize noise as truth, therefore they are unable to transfer their fears onto you. You no longer trust them with your confidence, so they can no longer undermine it. You finally realize that alignment, not acceptance, is the source of direction, thus they can no longer control you. And in ways they never expected, you become untouchable now that you've moved into alignment. You were sharper rather than louder after your identity was revealed. It made you sovereign rather than rebellious. It made you indisputable rather than terrifying. You now leave psychological imprints on every space you enter as you move through life. Before they see you, they sense you. Before you say anything, they make adjustments. Before kids understand why, they pay attention. Furthermore, that gravitational force is resonance rather than haughtiness. People who have made a complete commitment to themselves are responded to by the world. Souls who have given up arguing their value are acknowledged by the world. The world submits to discipline-driven authenticity rather than ego. Because you have already sought the truth, you have evolved into a person who does not seek approval. Someone who, since they no longer reject themselves, doesn't fear rejection. Someone who, having learned to grow under pressure, doesn't back down from discomfort. Someone who doesn't apologize for your existence because your presence now carries purpose. You have become someone whose identity is not reactive, but productive. You construct your reality instead of conforming to it. You shape your path instead of waiting for permission. You define your narrative instead of ceding it to others. And as this identity gets more integrated, more embodied, more natural, more effortless, you'll witness the world separate itself, not through conflict, but through resonance. Those who are aligned with your progress will ascend with you. Those who are threatened by it will fall away. Those who appreciate you will approach with clarity. Those who envy you will flee into shadow. Those who envy you will flee into shadow. Those who realize your strength will treat you, and those who cannot handle your identity will expose themselves simply by failing to adjust to the new frequency you carry. This isn't losing, it's sorting. This isn't conflict, it's clarity. This isn't ego, it's elevation. Because a person who knows who they are no longer worries who they lose. A person who is grounded in identity doesn't cling to anything that distorts their truth. A person who has stepped into their complete self doesn't deal with. You're not getting selective, you're becoming aligned. And alignment always demands cleansing. But the greatest shift, the one that marks the genuine completeness of your metamorphosis, isn't how the world treats you, it's how you treat yourself. You no longer silence your instincts to protect others from discomfort. You no longer dares your light to be digestible. You no longer your humility as a cloak for insecurity. You no longer delay your evolution because of allegiance to old identities. You no longer carry the emotional garbage of those who failed to clear up their own chaos. You've outgrown the version of you that was terrified of being noticed. You've outgrown the version of you that depended on validation. You've outgrown the version of you that confused acceptance with belonging. The part of you that thought you had to earn your life is no longer relevant. You've uncovered something unique and unforgettable by abandoning those versions. Someone who is really authentic. No performance, no dilution, no reluctance, and no masks. Just the unadulterated, unvarnished truth. Furthermore, truth becomes a force that distorts reality when it is embodied. The internet was rocked by your identity revelation because of this. It was clarifying rather than alarming. You didn't present something novel to the world. You demonstrated something genuine to the world. You revealed to them the version of yourself that was constantly present beneath the criticisms, assumptions, miscommunications, worries, and insecurities. You revealed to them the aspect of yourself that persevered through every betrayal, silence, rejection, and undervaluation. You demonstrated to them the individuality that persisted, changed, became more refined, and would not go away. And now you become the reminder they are unable to avoid as you fully, proudly, and unapologetically embody this identity. The lesson that power comes from authenticity. The lesson that freedom comes from clarity. The reminder that taking possession of oneself is an act of resistance. The reminder that identity is a calling rather than a garment. The reminder that despite being surrounded by people who needed you, you were never little. Thus, as you come to the end of this chapter, realize this. The revelation of your identity wasn't the pinnacle. Rather, it was the starting point, the invitation and the start of a life that at last matched the scope of who you are. You violated the restrictions imposed on your name, not the internet. The stories based on your silence were disrupted by you. You disproved the presumptions made while you were away. You dispelled the myth that you had to remain silent in order to survive. They can no longer belittle, mislabel, or misunderstand the person they are staring at. You've evolved into the person they never anticipated and the force they are unable to ignore.